I had last week, we had a delay, someone canceled, but I got you now, Johnny. Johnny, welcome to the Mikey G podcast experience. How you doing, brother?
I'm good, man. I'm stoked to be here and I appreciate you having me. So, yeah, man, we've kind of just recently been introduced, but I'm excited to go a lot deeper on this podcast. So, yeah, thankful to be here.
No, it's going to be awesome, man, because we have a lot of similarities in the background. And what I love doing about this, man, is I think everyone has talents like we were talking about before we went on. This is one of mine. And it's just, I shot out of bed this morning because I was like, I get to talk to Johnny for an hour and a half and do what I love to do. And we're here already. That being
Yep.
said, I'm going to give a little update about myself, and then the rest is about Johnny. It's all about Johnny after that. So, Mikey G, what has been happening? I think you all have noticed I have stopped tweeting as much on X. This is 100% intentional. I have a website that I'm really trying to double down on, building a blog. I'm actually getting traction. I've started to double down on LinkedIn. I'm posting at least 5 times a week. Johnny is going to make some amazing content for LinkedIn. I can't wait to be dropping that stuff. And I'm getting, what's cool? Listen, I love you all, crypto Twitter. And I love you all, Web3. But there's still a lot of extraction going on. And I'm talking to business people that have built things. But I still, by the way, B-Rock, OG Triple Media, who loves Web3 culture like I do and is trying to build a media entity based around the Web3 culture and the vibes, because that is the ethos and the amazing part about Web3. I'm working with him to do a daily, weekly space, not daily. As you know, my perception of spaces, don't love them to death because they don't go deep like we do on this podcast, but that's actually what we're going to do. So we're DGen hours, 8 p.m. Friday PST. We're going to invite founders back on that either he knows or I know, and we're going to have meaningful conversation about a topic. It's going to be called Beyond the Code, and we're just going to have deep fireside chats, not so much personal, but more about topics that are relevant to what's going on in this day and age. So I'm really excited about that. That's how I'm going to stay in Web3. But I have transitioned my brand pretty hardcore. And talking to people like Johnny is exactly where I want to be, which is tech, creative, design, entrepreneurship in general, not just focused on NFT, degen stuff, which I did for a long time. Loved it, but we're moving on. So that is enough about me. That's the little bit of the update. The rest is about Johnny. So Johnny is an amazing human being. I'm going to start off by the quick background, like I always do. Creative entrepreneur, art director, award-winning brand designer. We can talk about awards. I've actually won a Grand Cannes Lions Award and a One Show Pencil. You probably know what those two are.
Yep.
Uh,
Big time.
Pioneer when it comes to AI. So we're going to talk about this too. I love the collision of AI and creativity because there's this huge narrative out here that we're all going to become dumb and less creative. AI is literally going to, in my mind, create the most creative, insane things that our minds can't even think or fathom of right now. Gemini 3 just came out. It's fucking mind-blowing, dude.
Yeah.
It's mind-blowing. But this is a cool thing too. Certified in flow state. I am really interested in that, and I can't wait to talk about it. But this is the most important part. People do not know this. Johnny shreds on the blades, baby. And you've been shredding on the blades for how long? It's the fun fact.
Yeah, dude. So I was telling you earlier, you wanted a fun fact, and mine is definitely, I think from the age of like 10 to 18, I literally had rollerblades, skates on my feet more than I did shoes. That was my entire sort of adolescence, coming of age. Watched the movie Airborne. Some of you may remember in the
Oh
90s.
my gosh.
Dude, great 90s flick when I was super young. And then I bought a pair of cheap rollerblades at Sam's Club with some friends on a trip, and then dude literally took over my life. That was the rise of aggressive skating.
Yeah.
And Dude, went all in, basically formed a group of like tight knit friends that we stayed together basically throughout. I mean, we're still friends, but yeah, man, Friday night, skate trips all over the country. I had some friends that were like pro level. I was not quite that insane, but dude, it was a great way to spend my formative years. I
I love it.
can't
And
say enough
dude,
good things about it,
Airborne, by the way, you just blew
dude.
my mind with that. I loved that
That's a deep
movie.
cut. Yeah,
I
somebody
forgot
go
about it.
pull
I
that
mean,
back up, man.
it also immediately brings up one of the also greatest movies that ever existed called Rad. I'm sure you
Dude,
remember that one.
yep.
Those types of movies is like our childhood on our
Dude, the rise of extreme sports in the 90s was such like an interesting cultural moment. And that actually ties into like the flow state stuff we'll get into. Like
yeah.
my sort of flow master Stephen Kotler, he was a journalist and photographer in the 90s following around a bunch of extreme sports athletes and seeing them rise the level of what was supposed to be the human limit like on a weekly basis. And he's like, how is this happening? That got him interested in flow states, and then he's basically dedicated his life to it since.
Yeah, and then thank you Red Bull, which I actually attribute Red Bull and their brand and their ethos is they're one of the first actually attribute them to like the ethos of Web3 in the sense that in my mind they're one of the first real big brands that created a lifestyle brand, right? Like
Yeah,
if you think of Red Bull, you actually think of extreme sports first sometimes. You don't even think
yeah,
of the energy drink, right? And there had no been brand of like shifted and took in that cultural moment and then created it as their I mean, they even created a media company, right? Which is
yeah,
incredible. And that I always use that analogy when people are like, why do you even care about this as a bunch of scam things? And I'm like, imagine Red Bull, but imagine you can sit in a Discord with the Red Bull CEO and co-create with your community and believe in the same thing. That's magical to me, right? I was a
yep,
brand design marketing guy like you. And when I found blockchain, that is actually why I stayed because I was like, dude, this is going to revolutionize the way that you can co-create by building a company. And that's just such a novel idea. And I still don't think many people have done it right. All we've done really well so far is token gated Discord, create another digital country club, right? But there's
yeah,
so many opportunities, and we'll talk about that as well too. Dude,
yep.
already an amazing conversation. I can already tell, man. I love your takes. It's going to be beautiful. So, how do we get there? We get there by one simple question. Again, people, this is not scripted. This is intentional to just have a meaningful campfire side type esque conversation. And we get there by the world famous Mikey G podcast experience question. Jonny, how did you get to the seat you're sitting in today? To reiterate for the audience that is currently listening that has never heard or will listen to the podcast in the future, we do this by going through 3 chapters. Chapter 1 is your childhood, man. Prompting questions, parents, parental figures, mantras that still you live and breathe today. Vivid memories. Were you a tinkerer? Did you shred on rollerblades like we talked about? Chapter 2 is any relevant schooling, and then really the professional career, whether you work for the design studios, you're an entrepreneur. But remember here, mainly framed in the failures. You know, we learn from the failures.
Mhm.
Like I said before we came onto the podcast, the main thing that we do here is I'm trying to help Jonny tell his human story. And you all learn from this, right? Learning and growing in the pursuit of that, you have to do that for the rest of your life. Because in my mind, if you're not doing that, it's the day you start dying, to be honest. Chapter 3 is augmented imagination, AI, creativity, what you're currently doing now and what the future looks like. So, bro, hit that childhood wherever you want to start. Let's take that magical journey.
Dude, this is great, and I love the way you like frame this up. Right, and this is right. This is the point of sort of going through things, going through hardships, so you can share them, and somebody else can kind of benefit from it.
Mhm.
Um, Childhood is a weird one because I almost break that into like 3 chapters. I felt like I lived like
Perfect.
9 lives before the time I was like 21.
Mm-hmm.
So like 1 to 7, both of my parents are like registered nurses. Grew up in northern New Mexico. I should set that up. So little oil filled town called Aztec, New Mexico. If anybody happens to be familiar with Durango, Colorado, great ski town, great college town. So I grew up in a little desert town about an hour south of that, just on the New Mexico side. So, we were kind of in a different place because, all my family, all my friends, it's just like oil filled, it's roughnecks, it's not a whole lot
Mm.
else. And then we were kind of like the well-to-do family because both of my parents were RNs. So 1 to 7 was kind of that pretty standard, good kind of middle class, small town upbringing. 7 to 14, like full collapse of my family, like on a number of levels. Um,
Mm.
a lot of that oriented around my mom developing an opioid addiction. I always say my mom was sort of like wave zero of like the opioid
Right.
epidemic. And then that sort of led to a collapse of like my parents' marriage. My dad tried to like basically drink himself to death, just like spiraled out really hard. I have an older sister who's absolutely amazing. She's 2.5 years older than me. She was like valedictorian, captain of the cheerleading squad. Like if you ask anybody from my hometown about me, it's
Yeah.
like I'm Josie's little brother, right? That's like
Mm.
she's the figure, she's the high achiever. Me, I
How do
was
you
kind of just like,
real quick, how do you think she kept that together, man? Like, that's the thing I'm always fascinated about. Well, it's not about her, but, like, perseverance in general in your mind, reflecting back. You just talked about a lotta intense stuff, but look at you, right? Like, you've built your own companies, you have won awards, you've done some things. What is that quote unquote, I don't know, people call it grit, they call it many different things. What's that concept in your mind looking about this time period in your life? Because that's super fascinating to me.
yeah, dude, I like to call it, sort of like I'm a big fan of like stoicism,
Mm.
anti-fragile, being kind of anti-fragile. And I went through, I know you can relate, and we'll probably get into this at some point, but like a very sort of soul search reflective period,
Yes.
right? Starting kind of like 2015 through 2020 was like the height of it.
Yeah.
Um, but just really reflecting on my childhood and
Yeah.
going through this process, as I like to call it, like redeeming my demons. So trying to look
Mm.
at the worst things that had ever happened to me and then
Right.
find the good to come out of it. And I think a lot of it is like that sort of trained me from an early age to just be kind of anti-fragile and
Mm.
understand that like I can survive some very gnarly things. Like I experienced full collapse like a few times by the time I was like 18, like I said. So now it's almost like I wonder if there's something wrong with me because I'll be in the gnarliest situations, startup life, no funding, all this stuff. And I'm just like cool as a cucumber, not that I like don't get stressed, but like part of you almost, I think a lot of this in this world, you almost crave that chaos, right? You want to be like, as we say in the Think community, like I want to be out on the edge of life playing jazz with my friends.
Dude,
So I
dude.
think there,
So I gotta jump in here because I 100% understand what you're saying. And this is what I want, and this is what I don't know, because this is my opinion on this whole topic is, I don't think I could have that calmness and different perspective unless I went through the fire, you know? Um, because I have now a reference point to be like, I almost died, and I was second to second for almost a year. I was sleeping an hour a night. It was fucking brutal, right?
yeah.
And so I'm like, if I somehow got up every day and put one foot in front of the other, I'm cool, bro. I understand it. What is your, like, that's my version and take. How do you explain that?
you frame it like another way? Like, what do you
So,
mean? Like,
because you said you're cool as a cucumber under extreme pressure in startups having no funding. And I understand that mindset. I think my question is, how did you get there? Is it really the stoicism and reflecting on these things, or do you have another way to explain that? I think is
I
what I'm.
mean, I think it was like sort of my childhood and going through these things, going
Yeah.
through these phases. So it was like, right, watching my mom, and there was a number of things going on. Like she was on an antidepressant, and there's since been some like class action lawsuits that women in the 90s who were on this antidepressant and then hit menopause, they had like this crazy personality change. So it
Oh
was
boy.
almost like watching my mom turn into this different person, which had all of these like right reverberations with my dad, the family, and everything else. Um, but like going through that, and like, I mean, I'll fast forward to like part of the climax, like that 1 to 7. And I've heard that like you have this, like a child has this sort of fundamental development from ages 1 to 7, right? And I think I really got lucky in that, like, I had this like ideal picturesque childhood from 1 to 7. Like, uh always felt very loved, always felt very taken care of. So like I didn't have the issues I think a lot of people have, that like the life I lived from like 7 to 14, which was just like my mom struggling with addiction, my dad struggling with addiction, um, all sorts of spiraling circumstances that sort of climax with like my parents having this terrible divorce, my mom getting trapped into this like abusive relationship with this alcoholic, my dad sort of continuing to, as I like to say, like he committed sort of like slow, socially acceptable suicide, where he just kept eating, kept drinking, and
Right.
at
Right.
14 he basically died of a massive stroke in my arms. Uh,
Wow.
you know, we were we were going to it was 4th of July, so we're like going to a fireworks show. My dad's driving the car, an F-250. I'm in like the little jump seat in the back with my buddy Toby. So crazy, man. Like, had ridden in the seat several times before. I go to put on my seatbelt. His girlfriend at the time is in sort of the driver's seat. I go to put on my seatbelt. Seatbelt won't lock, which is really strange. And I literally tell him, I'm like, it's okay. I trust your driving. And so we get out of town, we're going 65 miles per hour. He's holding up a wad of cash saying, we got to stop to get ice. And he stops in the middle of the word ice. And I thought he was like messing with us, but he freezes up, has like a massive stroke at 65 miles per hour, starts to
Wow.
veer off the road. We like drive through like a big roadside sign, and I sort of duck behind the seat. And then after that, like, your reflexes take over, and I just dove for the pedals. So I dove for the pedals. I'm mashing. We basically went off the road. Like, I wasn't actually the one that I don't think got the vehicle stopped, but like, and again, it's like desert.
Holy
So it's like, it's a drop off, and then a tire blows out, and we kind of come to a stop right there. But it took me years to kind of realize this, but I had basically, and I didn't understand what this was until I talked to my buddy Josh, who had a similar circumstance. But I now understand, like, I had sort of like a shared death experience with my dad, where it's like I sort of lose consciousness, I totally go out of it. The last thing I remember is diving for the pedals, and then when I wake up, and like my friend Toby and my dad's girlfriend Laura are out of the vehicle, and the truck is on a steep hillside like this, and
wow.
then they're out there, and there's a car stopped, and there's just people sort of lining up, and I'm just like sitting there holding my dad, and just kind of like hold him as he like heard him have like the death rattle, and then yeah, dude. So like,
Dude, thank
gnarly,
you.
gnarly shit. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Like, that is being vulnerable. It's Renee Brown. I don't know if you know who she is.
Yeah, definitely
Um,
familiar.
but you just showed courage, bro. Being vulnerable is courage to me, man. I really appreciate that. Keep on going.
Yeah, dude. Thank you. I appreciate that. But yeah, dude. So super, super gnarly, but to go through that, and then like that in itself is super traumatic. But
Mm,
like at that point, I was living with my dad. My mom is basically totally off the rails, sort of
mm.
like, full on heroin addiction, also meth. Like there's a massive
Ooh, yeah,
sort of narcotics issue in the area where we're from.
yeah,
Um, and so like I literally never went back to my dad's house, never went back to my bedroom. Like family came and packed it up. And then I just kind of go and start living with my mom. And as I tell people, I basically took like uh when it was like it felt like much longer, but basically from 14 to 16, I was living with my mom and sort of took a tour of the underworld where it's like, and I always like to like I never felt unsafe. Like I didn't feel
right, right,
I didn't feel in danger in that way, but like I was essentially living in like a tweaker pad and we would move every 3 months and then like we would run out of money and like at the end of it, like we're literally living in like a roadside hotel. And then I turned 16, so I started getting my own kind of social security check from my dad. And my sister was like, "All right, we're getting you out of here." So
right.
me and my sister got an apartment together, and I mean, I've basically been an adult since I was like 14, 15. So all that to say is like, dude, that like, and again, like I went through this process several years ago of like, how do I look at the worst shit that has happened to me and like find the good in it and find what like, again, I refer to it as literally like redeeming your demons. And the big part of all of this for me is like, it's that sort of like anti-fragility where I realized like, man, I've gone through some gnarly stuff. And it took, right? It takes you getting enough distance on it and getting enough age
Mm,
where it's almost like I can see that as like young Johnny, young John. And it's, but yeah, man, it's so crazy. But I'm also like so thankful for all of it in such a crazy way because like I feel like it's really given me the keys to sort of like navigating my life and navigating this insane era in history that we're in, right? Where it's just
yeah.
like nonstop change.
Is it is another word that comes to mind as you talk is this a form of gratitude is what you're talking about?
100%. Yeah. I think it is like if you can look at the worst thing that's happened to you and like find gratitude in it, then like it reorients everything, right? It like paints everything in a different light. Um, and I just had to go through that process because like you'll go insane if you don't, right? You
Yeah.
become bitter, you become angry, you become resentful, and like that shit's the real poison.
So what do you think I struggle with this and I this is one of the things I can't explain. I mean, you're talking it and I actually talk about this with my buddies too. Like, I did the typical what people would think prototypical America was like. I had a nice my parents got divorced, which messed me up later on in life, and I didn't realize that, but I always felt loved. I always had food on the table, I had a roof over my head. I was not in traumatic situations like you. I lived in a nice white typical suburban America. I went to college. Um, I did your binge drinking college thing, and then that progressed into my advertising career. As you know, that's kind of a lifestyle.
Hmm.
And I'm always, I look back in moments, I'm fractions from looking at, I know other people that had the same thing, but like are still working at UPS because they got in trouble or they made a bad decision. And I'm like, I'm only like a step removed from that life. And so my question to you is, what I what is that? Eh, like, reflect you can reflect back at the time and say, "Okay, this is the way I'm in." I'm thinking more in the moment. What do you think the differentiator is to someone like your outcome, and then someone like, I would say 98% of the people in your situation go the bad outcome? What is
Yeah.
that?
I mean, again, like trying to find the good out of bad situations. I think a lot of it for me was like operating without a safety net was like just drove me on because like there was no soft landing, there was no kind of safe place, right? There was no foundation to go back to. And I often think about that, like, because I'm the same way, man. Like some of my friends that like didn't get out of, the little town we're from, like they're just in horrible states right now. Like
Right. Right.
terrible addictions, personality disorders, again,
Right.
just like bitterness and anger at the world.
Yeah.
Um, and it also like I think part of it and like right losing my dad early on, and this was a subconscious thing, but like I've always been the guy that like when I was in middle school, I was hanging out with the high schoolers. When I was in high school, my friends were in college. So I'm
Mm,
almost like, and like really, really solid guys. Like, so I was almost like searching for these like mentors or kind of father figures. And again,
yeah.
dude, like all props to my sister. Like my sister is sort of my mom in so many ways.
Right. Right.
But I've always really searched out for those people in other places. Like I knew that wasn't just limited to my parents. I could find that other places. I'm super close with like my dad's brother now, my uncle, and it's like we have that same bond, that same thing. And like we actually, he's a stained glass artist and a painter, so we like work on projects together now, which is absolutely amazing. Um, but I think it was almost again, yeah, sort of like everything was like fire and ash. So it's like, all right, let's move on and like
Yeah.
find what the next thing is. So I've always just been like propelled forward to like keep going, keep going, keep going. And honestly, something I like struggle with now where I'm like, I need to just like be present in my current circumstances, but I'm still kind of
Mm,
hardwired to be like
mhm.
constantly trying to escape my present reality. But then I stop and I look around at my present reality. I'm like, oh, this is actually really dope. I
Yeah.
read this in and appreciate it more.
Yeah, it was almost like, the how I'm interpreting it is almost like your version of survival mode, right? Like you were, because at some point your instincts are just like, I gotta live, man. I gotta
Yep.
survive. And you have this internal will. You said one more thing before I'm really interested into like the mindset of like why design and creativity, and that's just a beautiful topic. But before we get there, you said one really important thing that comes up often in, because it's really interesting in the like the successful entrepreneurs that come on the show. You've got uh you've got people that lived very normal lives or very privileged lives, and then you have people like you who have had some traumatic things, but they all come to the same mindset. One of the universal themes is, and I really believe in this too, is love, man. You literally
Hmm.
mentioned the word love, and you're talking about all this traumatic stuff, but at some point you still felt a sense of love, I think is what I heard you say. Talk to me about that topic and the importance of that when you're young.
Yeah. So again, like up to like the age of 7, I just had this like ideal picturesque childhood, parents that loved me very much. We were definitely like spoiled, whatever we wanted. I remember waking up Christmas morning and there being like a new go-kart like in the
Right.
living room, just like crazy stuff. We were definitely my wife's from the same small town and she gives me shit. She's like, yeah, you guys were like the rich kids because she
Yeah,
was like
yeah.
she's from also very traumatic childhood, but like
Right.
uh a lot of similar themes, but like she was not in the same position.
Mhm, mhm,
Um,
mhm.
but dude, that and even through, and this is like honestly, it took me a long time to sort of talk about all of this, and I
Yeah.
had a hard time because I feel like obviously super gnarly and like reflects poorly on my mom, my mother, which I don't like because
Yeah. Yeah.
I understand and I was able to appreciate. I think this is one of my superpowers. I was able to appreciate very early on and not judge that like this was not her, this was something she was struggling with, and
Mm,
like she didn't do these things because she didn't care about me or love me, like quite the
yeah.
opposite. I always felt very loved, very cared for. And even like, you know, the people that were around me, right? They may have been meth addicts or struggling with addiction, but like very sweet people. And I always
Yeah.
felt very taken care of. And I learned a lot of great things, right?
Mhm,
Um,
mhm, mhm.
so love was like, yeah, dude, that was never an issue. I always felt very loved from, both my mom, my sister, my friends that sort of rallied around me and really like I always tell people it's weird. I feel like I almost had this like Harry Potter effect early on, where like small town, everybody sort of was very aware of this like unraveling that happened in our family, everything that happened with me,
Yeah.
right? My dad passing, that it just felt like everybody sort of I interacted with was kind of aware of that. So they were just like
Mhm.
very warm and welcoming to me.
Yeah,
Um, so
dude.
yeah.
And I think I just can't, um you've already changed hundreds of lives, by the way, man. I
Oh,
really
dude.
appreciate this. That it
No, I
means so
appreciate
much
it.
to me. And that is just that's one of the things, and the world needs so much more of this, right? It's just love and
Yeah.
kindness, man. Like, it's
Yeah.
the golden rule. Like, we make things so complicated, but you just went through an insane story. And one of the themes was love and people showing you kindness, right? Uh,
Yep.
you just can't reiterate that point enough, man. Dude,
Yeah,
thank
dude.
you.
And like you really feel that in the dark times, like
Yeah,
when you're in those places, like it's that much more apparent and transparent.
yeah,
Dude, I also wanted to say, like, I recognize too, I always feel weird about talking about this stuff because it feels like at times where it's just like people are trying to like out trauma one another. But I want to say, like, I don't say this to like discount what anybody else has gone through. And dude, you talked about like your parents' divorce. Like, despite all of the super gnarly stuff I went through, like that's still the stuff that's like hardest for me to process. And just that like unspoken tension in the house and between them, like
yeah,
that's still one of the hardest things for me to grapple with. So I
yeah.
wanted to say that, like, not to discount anybody else, like what anybody else has gone through, because like, dude, life is hard no matter what. And it feels like no matter how it manifests, like you face these challenges.
Yeah,
But yeah.
dude, so beautiful, and I agree. I have this it's really interesting, and I didn't dude, like, when I was in my early 20s, I used to say this too, and I don't even know where it comes from, but I think it was my subconscious, which was, like, I used to say, because I used to lead people too, and I would for some odd reason, I would say, like, "Hey, man, a lot of times you have to hit your lowest point in life to become the greatest person you can become," and I had no clue where that
Rock
was coming.
bottom is a great foundation to build
Yeah,
from,
and
right?
and I guess
Yeah.
that was because I was thinking about the things that were in my head. But to your point, you make a really interesting point, because I have the same mindset. Is somebody's worst is not your worst, and the out trauma, the trauma thing, it's become a thing, and it's really,
Yep.
really hard to see,
Yep.
because everybody's mind is different. We know like 5% of what the brain does, right? AI is
Yep.
probably going to unlock a lot of interesting insights. But the other thing that you said too is kind of back to this gratitude thing, is when you have this perspective, and you know what's cool? This conversation could click that for somebody, will click that for somebody. And hopefully the outcome is we save them from having to go through as harsh of time to get there, because they're hearing this and it's really resonating with them in some form of way. That's the number one thing why I love doing what we do. But two is when you go through this, I always say this, like, if I went through my 2017 to 19 and I was in Baltimore with no dad and a mom addicted to drugs, like, crack or something like that, I don't think I would be where I am today for sure. So what I'm getting at is I don't agree with, but I understand why horrible shit happens, because you can never, I hate this also mentality of people sitting on the couch opining about life, saying that is a horrible human being, but they have no clue about this person's circumstance. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah, dude. 100%. And one of the things, great conversation I've had with Brian McDonald, who you should definitely have on here at some point if you haven't. He's, Jesse's kind of former business partner. I'm working on him,
Yeah, he's the one
working
that
with
wrote
him.
the book that Jesse always references,
Yeah,
right?
the Invisible Ink. He's just like, he's a story sage, right? But we were having the discussion because he's always looking at things through the frame of story in this very sort of like philosophical meta view. And we were talking about how there always has to be struggle within story. And if there's not struggle, we don't engage. And it reminded me, my friend Paul, who's a good friend of your business partner Tom and I's. He's
Yeah.
like one of the world's like foremost kind of coffee experts, master level roaster. He was sourcing coffee from all over the world for several years.
Man.
And one of the things he told us that was so fascinating, he's like, the best coffee plants come from these environments where there's adversity and it's hard to grow. And I was just sort of recognizing that with what Brian was saying about struggle and sort of like tying that all together. And Brian just said this beautiful line. He said, adversity breeds character. Like we have to go through adversity to develop our character. And I was like, dude, that's it. And you see it on a meta level. It's true for coffee plants. It's true for humans, right? You have to go through that. And the people that have gone through some of the gnarliest stuff, like some of the best character.
Yep. Yep. And back to what we said to layer onto this, and then we'll get into like your kind of more career and interests and aspirations, is that all circles back to when you go through that, like I felt, because I just felt this overabundant. My mom was the most loving human. She is, got to meet her someday. She is just the nicest, and just, she has gone through hell and back in her life, but never lost this pure joy for just life and people, right?
Yep.
And so again, if you can get through those things, my number one advice would be, and if you're hearing this and in a situation like that, find people that are genuinely good people and show love and care, because
Yep.
that is a huge hack for being in those situations. And they're all around, right? They're all out there. You just got to find them, right? Uh,
Yep.
Beautiful conversation, man. Incredible
Yeah.
conversation.
Um, just wanted to say, dude, to kind of like wrap a bow up on that chapter and riffing off what you're saying. Yeah, dude, like my mom to this day is like one of my best friends. She got clean several years later. She became like an addiction counselor, and she's just this kind of like light to everybody around her. I always tell people she's got this sort of like pack of strays. It feels like people with like mental illness or still struggling with addiction, they just sort of gather around my mom, and she's this motherly figure for all of them. And I think I sort of recognized that again at like an early age, where I was like, oh, she's being a mother to all of these people as well, because they don't have the benefit of having a mom like I do. So
Right.
I've always appreciated that. But like her story arc definitely is been totally redeemed as well. And yeah, she's beautiful, beautiful person.
We keep on layering on, but this is the last thing I'll say too is,
Yeah.
isn't it cool? And this is another things that people need to hear is, if you can frame it with gratitude, um, and look back and understand the circumstances, isn't it cool that she did change and then it becomes a good story? Because there's a lot of
Yep.
people that get stuck in the bad and never get out of that. And if
Yep.
you reach, all it is a reframe, right? Uh,
Yep.
Beautiful things can happen out of really horrible things.
Yep.
Yeah, that's incredible. Incredible, bro. All right. So you're shredding on blades.
Yeah.
You're a designer. You've won awards. Talk to me about creativity and getting through this stuff. This is the last thing we'll talk about in like chapter 1, and then we'll get into chapter 2, which is, how are your interests in all of these different things starting to form in your mind? Why? Well, like what is sparking your curiosity at that moment in time?
Yeah. Was always a kid that kind of loved drawing and just kind of sketching, cartoons and stuff. Um, I think throughout all of this too, I recognize now, like I was a kid that I liked alone time, and there was like so much going on. My sister's like
Mm.
at cheerleading practice doing all this stuff, but I would like just quiet time by myself, like figuring out how to draw Garfield, right? A lot of just like stuff like I think about this with the flow state stuff, which I'll get into later, but I would spend like hours on the side of my house, like throwing a ball at the wall with like both hands and then trying to get good at like throwing and catching with both hands.
Mhm,
Just
mhm.
like weird, weird stuff like that. Other things I did when I was a kid that I now recognize were like sort of clues along the way. Like I remember my parents had this sort of like, it was almost this like faux kind of marble, but it was like this weird texture kind of wallpaper in their bedroom. And I would spend a long time just looking at it and like finding sort of characters in that I thought looked like a figure and sort of like developing stories around them.
Wow.
So like things now that I think about, I'm like, it's not like a normal, maybe that is a normal kid thing, but I think was kind of unique to me. Another big part of this was I mentioned my uncle who like I collaborate with now. Like he's always been an active and pretty successful artist. So like super early on, I remember like going to our local college and he was having like a solo show. And one of the paintings out of that like was purchased by like AT&T. He painted the back of a very famous cathedral in New Mexico. And he did this kind of beautiful impressionistic kind of watercolor of it. And like, I remember like AT&T like purchasing prints of that for their corporate office and then him like signing and sending a bunch of prints. So I
So
think
cool.
early on it was kind of a like it seemed real to me, be like, oh, you can just kind of make art and get paid for it. But that being said, like I mean, in school, I took all of the photography classes, all of the art classes. My wife and I, again, we've known each other since like sixth grade. We were friends early on, and that relationship was kind of formed around an art class, right? Just like making stuff around a table in the art room. That being said, I didn't like, I don't think I was stand out where everybody was like, "Oh, this kid's like, incredible. He's gonna go on to make a career of this." Like, I was always like competent and successful. I also should note that like the school I went to, they would actually bus in. The town is right on the edge of the Navajo reservation, which is like the largest Indian reservation in the U.S. So they would actually bring in kids from the reservation, and they would go to school with us. They'd be there, basically stay in these dorms Monday and Friday, and then go home to the reservation on the weekends. But dude, their culture is like it's just in them in a different level. So like all of the Navajo kids were just like sick and would just like run circles around us creatively. So I don't think it was ever like, oh, this kid's gonna be amazing. I was like, oh, I'm okay at this, but like, I'm
Talk,
not exceptional. But I just kind of kept pulling on that thread.
do you have any thoughts about that as to why they were exponentially more creative?
Dude, so I have a friend who is making a documentary, basically about right the Dene or Navajo tribe, and he had this great insight that never really hit me. And he was saying, basically, in the Western world, we think of creativity is something like top down, like we tap into the muse like it's up in the cloud, and then we open up to inspiration and it comes to us. He says with them it's bottom up. It's like just in them, and they
Ooh,
absorb it out of the earth and then bring it out. And I was like, dude, that is so spot on. And I think
damn.
there's really truth to that, but it's just like that is their culture. They are artisans. They make the most beautiful pottery, the most beautiful paintings, right? All of this stuff. So like it's just ingrained in their culture in a different way. But when I heard that, I was like, dude, you're 100% right.
Dad, and so it's so it just gave me chills, man, because
Yeah.
I always describe this podcast in a different way, which I think is saying the same thing that you said, which is we teach creativity as a skill when really creativity is a mindset and a being, which is earth bottom up, which is such a cool way
Yep.
to say that. So like for instance, when we go through school, if you know how to draw, you're creative. But that's just a
Hmm.
tool and a
Yep.
product of creativity, right? So I think we just teach creativity wrong. Creativity is art class. That's not really creativity. That's just an
Yep.
outcome of creativity. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Dude, another thing that like again, my uncle was like planting seeds early on, and one thing he always talks about, he's like, creativity was our first language. He's like, we had cave paintings and drum circles before we had
Mm,
spoken language, So
mm.
like that is actually more close to our actual form of expression than spoken language, which I think is 100% right.
Yeah, and that's why. Well, we'll get into design, but like that's one of the first things that they talked about. in design school is like, hey, you're not here to make beautiful things. What you're here to do is communicate effectively through visuals. Like that's really
Hmm.
what design is, right? In
Yep.
my mind, and that's what they taught us, and that resonated and clicked. Again, back to there's such a deeper meaning to creativity and why people do visual things. Beautiful conversation, man. Okay, so
Yeah, dude, this is great.
you're you're talk to me about this though too, because this is interesting, and you can jump forward or just I'm reflecting on this because one of the interesting things that you said is there's kind of two kind of different perspectives I see a lot for people flowing through this, which is you said you were you weren't like a rock star in creativity when it came to that lifetime, but you've also now won awards and built design firms. Where does that come from? Is this thing that I hear all the time, which is just consistency over a long time that then turns into mastery? Because there's other people that just have a knack for it naturally. So it sounds like
Yep.
you worked at it for a while. Like what are your concepts or thoughts there?
Yeah, I think you kind of nailed it. It's just like consistency over time. Like even to this day, like I want to be actively making something. That's when I'm happiest, right? And even like I do it for work. You give me a couple minutes alone, I'm going to start writing a poem. Like I want to be doing some sort of creative output at all times. And I just sort of kept pulling on that thread and kept going, and it kept sort of like evolving into these different places. Um, and then over time, you kind of step back and you're like, oh, damn, I'm really good at this now. And it's just because like those reps, right? Like I always tell people, like, you know, the 10,000 hours, like I've got that time, like, I'm stacking like stripes on the black belt at this point.
Yeah.
It's just because I kept going. And you just build on top of those skill sets.
Yeah. Have you ever read the book Mastery from Robert Greene? Uh
I've
Beautiful book.
uh I've listened to a lot of like podcasts with Robert Greene, but I'm intimidated by how big his books are, so I haven't actually
They're
read the
big.
book.
This one is definitely shorter, and
Yeah.
it's about the
Okay.
same
Cool.
concept, right? He breaks down famous people over time and what mastery meant to them. Uh,
Hmm.
it's really interesting, super interesting book.
Yeah,
Okay,
he's great.
so, let's start
R.I.P.
transitioning to chapter 2. We've already been talking for almost an hour, man, like
Yeah, dude, we might
super
have to speed run
5
this one.
minutes, but no, you can't cut off this, like, it's too beautiful, so yeah, man. Like, talk to me about you're getting into creativity. You're seeing people make money off of artwork, like you said. Was it AT&T? Is what you said?
Yeah, yeah, my uncle.
Go for it.
So basically, that group of friends I came up skating with, basically, they were all several years older than me. My senior year was very depressing for me because like all of my friends had already moved away to college and I was just kind of left. And so basically graduated, followed them to New Mexico State University. So I grew up in like the northwest corner of the state, and then uh, NMSU is in Las Cruces, New Mexico, which is the far southern end of the state. It's like 45 minutes, an hour from El Paso, Texas. So from like one border to the other. But basically followed them to school down there. Really had like no direction going into college. I just wanted to like be with my friends. Initially signed up as like a business major, and then was doing all of your sort of required prereq stuff. And I was like, okay, I've got to do some like art and design classes. So I took like a visual language 101 and like an art history class, got in there, and then it just clicked right away. I was like, dude, there's a degree in, well, I should say two things happen at once. So I'm kind of just doing prereq class there. I'm realizing like, oh man, graphic design is a career I could pursue, graphic design and photography. At the same time, all of my friends that I grew up with and are now living in a house with, they all start this band. I'm not a musician. I absolutely love music. I'm a music
Right.
junkie. But I very quickly found that like, oh, doing the band logo and the t-shirts and the stuff, that's the way I get to be a part of this and sort
Oh,
of participate in this.
yeah.
So even before I got too far along in school, I basically right? Get a laptop, get my first version of Photoshop, and just start making flyers. And then other bands hire me. It sort of grows through there. So do the 5-year bachelor's degree, slow roll it a little bit, but do this really cool degree that's, it was really weird. And I'm glad I got to do it because it was like very focused fine arts, like film photography, and got like an amazing education in photography. But then the design side of things was like very practical. Learn Adobe InDesign, learn Adobe Illustrator. So like a lot of the like visual foundational stuff came from the photography side, but I think tied in so nicely with the more sort of practical business oriented design side of things. So yeah, essentially went through school, and all the while, I mean, at one point, like I was working various kind of small jobs, but my senior year, I was able to just support myself and freelance. I still remember I charged $25 for a flyer. I charged $50 for a photo shoot, and I had access to the lighting studio at the school, so I could do like professional level photo shoots for bands. I do $100 for an album cover. And man, we just like was able to like earn enough month in and month out to support myself, like pay for our apartment, and really just kind of like grew from there. So right out of school, graduate again, like all my friends graduated before me and moved away. So like senior year is just kind of sad. I'm like, oh man, everybody's gone. Wasn't quite sure what I was going to do. And at this
Can
point,
I jump in real
yeah,
quick
yeah, yeah.
before you keep going? I think this is an important concept to people, because the other thing we're doing here is talking about, creativity and design careers and photography. You said something really interesting that I think is worth talking about, which is you learned practical applications from the design side, but you learned more about art and visualization of photography. So can you just talk to me more about those juxtapositions and what those two things mean to you?
Yeah. So, like my photography professor, he was like a Guggenheim fellow, like very kind of celebrated artist. He was doing this series where there were these certain, pre sort of border wall. There were these monuments along the American Mexican border, and he was doing like large format landscape photography of these monuments, and often with people sort of like crossing over in the midst of it. So really interesting commentary on like immigration. But he would really like expose us to like very avant-garde photography and all of the discussions, to the point that like I was kind of frustrated at the time by it because it was just like so conceptual, so like, right, what are you really trying to communicate here? Where I was like, let's just talk about the composition. Like, am I framing this thing up right? So it was this really interesting mix of a fine arts degree with like a commercial arts degree. And again, I was getting all of the more sort of foundational, just like design, communication points from the design side of things, but then the photography side of things was like very creative, very artistic. Find your unique creative voice, right? How do you tease that out? What is your story? What do you want to say? And again, at the time, I was honestly kind of frustrated by that because I was like, man, I just want to make cool shit. But now I look back on it and I'm like very thankful that I had this unique combination of those two worlds, and I'm constantly trying to blend them together. You know, in my sort of freelance career, I've always had a hard time putting myself in a box because it's like I'm an illustrator, I'm a designer, I can do copywriting. So I just started saying like I make art for communication and communicate through art. I think that was the best way to kind of sum it up. And I really do like this idea of like not like design, but like communication arts. Like this should be a piece of art. This should be on that level. And that's always what I've, right, sort of strived to bring to my work.
Yeah, dude. And what's your advice to people that are in this stage of their life thinking about creative pursuit or a creative career? What like from your experience, what's your advice?
Um, Look at a lot
Actually,
of work from,
wait, sorry,
go
especially
ahead.
also tell general advice, but then if you can frame it also in the context of what's happening now with technology. So twofold: general creative
Yeah.
advice with technology.
Yeah, dude, those actually that tie in together really well. And this was just something I delivered a lecture to a bunch of designers about AI, and some of the points I hit on. But one, develop your taste, right? Look at a bunch of work, look at what resonates with you, look at what you're attracted to, and then try to uh, like destruct that a little bit. Not, uh, uh, break it into pieces. See
Yeah.
what are the layers there. What are you attracted to? What is it about this thing that is drawing you in? So just like develop your taste first and foremost, and also like don't get stuck in this just cycle where you're only looking at current designers and what they're posting. Like, go back in the archives. What are the eras you like? Like, do you love mid-century design? I did a lot of art history through my degree, and I'm so thankful for it because it exposed me to all of these different movements, these eras of art. So don't look at what's current right now because they're just referencing something from the past. So try to go to the source material. So
Mm.
really go deep on that and develop your taste is the first thing. And then the other thing is like passion projects, man. Just start building and exploring the things that you're interested in and you're curious about, and make more and more of that. Again, this was like the photography side of my degree that I was pushing back against. Like, what is your unique visual language, right? What attracts you? What comes out when you run sort of all of this inspiration you're taking through your unique algorithm, and then you output it. So in line with that, I tell people it seems counterintuitive, but like fundamentals and foundational understanding has never been more important. Because,
Oh.
dude, yeah. And I tell people, like, you need, especially working with AI, you need to understand and think like an art director. So you need to know, like, what are the foundational principles that make something work? How do you communicate that? And then how do you use these various tools to sort of like bring that out?
Give me
And
give me an example, a couple examples of what foundational principles mean to you. Because I know there's like universal ones, but like give me examples of what you mean by foundational principles.
I mean, one example that like comes to mind is, I mean, one foundational principle is like understanding what are these different areas of art, what are the things you want to kind of reference and bring back up. But I was working on basically art directing AI through creating some scenes recently, and I can say like, you know, understanding how composition works, use uh, right lower thirds to put the character over here. I want you to create leading lines from the other side of the frame that kind of lead the viewer's eye to this. I want like a subtle background blur to create more depth. And like I can just sort of word vomit out and really art direct AI in a way that's like, if you don't have that understanding, if you don't have that vocabulary, you can't do that.
You can't do
And
it,
so,
right?
yeah,
Yeah, and so, like, you mentioned Marks, and that's where my head was going. I just wanted to make sure we're on the same page, but, like, yeah, the grid, the rule of thirds, color theory,
yep,
understanding the impact and the emotion just a simple font can convey, right?
yep,
Like, these are, like, understanding the basics of what make up visually appealing things to us. Uh,
yep.
that's awesome, man, and I think I did talk to Tom about this, but, like, I'll tell you when I went down because I basically got an art history minor too. I was one class
Oh,
away from
right.
getting an art history minor.
I think I was in
Um,
the exact same boat.
yeah, because you had to take it, and I always had to take electives, and I was just fascinated by art throughout history and
Hmm.
architecture and all of these amazing things. But I think you're like me. I was so drawn to Bauhaus and Swedish design. Uh,
Yep,
and and I think even more just Swedish design, it's a simplicity, man. There's just something about simple, clean things that I don't know. It's just like resonates with my soul. I'm not
yep.
as I can appreciate the chaotic and the abstract, but I think for you to be able to make something so simple and clean and functional, that's just the epicenter of amazingness to me.
Yep. It's all about, right, removing friction for your viewer. And again, like communicating as much as possible, as quickly as possible. And then like that's goal and priority number one. If you can make it sort of beautiful and appealing on top of that, that's even better. And once you get to a state of mastery, you can really like fuse those two things together. But yeah, dude, that's what it is. And again, yeah, fundamentals, understanding how a grid system works, right? Like such a game changer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wouldn't have got there if I didn't go to design school. I wouldn't have appreciated it. I wouldn't even understood it. Man, this is so awesome. All right, let's get to you're exiting college. Beautiful, creative. I mean, we have tons of things to talk about. I'd love to touch on before we get to augmented because I don't want to lose sight of the beautiful things that you're building now. But I think flow state, and then at least 2 to 3 like really lessons learned, failures throughout this journey, where we really kind of get into chapter 2. Before I do that, I have to do the obligatory thing that I hate doing, but it's part and it actually works, which is we're close to 100 people watching. So like,
Right on. Shout out.
retweet, do all of the things because more people need to hear this conversation. We have changed fundamentally lives with this conversation, I know, and this is going to be evergreen content on a podcast. And I can't wait for more people to hear this, but they need to hear these concepts because they're fundamental to, I think, building and living a fruitful life. So thank you so much so far. Let's get into that chapter 2, brother.
Yeah. Sorry, dude. Can you cue it up again for me?
Yeah, totally cool. So you're exiting college, and now we're going to talk about really, 2 to 3 big failures, lessons learned, and then I also want to touch on flow state because I'm assuming this is when
Cool.
starts happening.
So yeah, exiting college, basically went from Las Cruces to Phoenix, Arizona. Again, a couple of friends I kind of grew up with and was really close with out there. Had sort of set up shop in Phoenix, and I did some internships out there with a photographer and also an illustration studio. So didn't have like a lot of prospects or leads coming out of college, but wound up in Phoenix again, just kind of like trying to stay with my people. Um, Ended up took sort of a UI design job for a short amount of time, and then got really lucky and found out that Fender Musical Corporations was hiring. I had all this music stuff in my portfolio. I went ahead and applied for the job. This is like 2008. So there was like a hiring freeze in the middle of it. I did like an interview, and then they did like a hiring freeze. I guess it was like 2008, 2009. But eventually get the job at Fender, which was like dream job, kind of right out of college, So I'm working on Fender, but they've got an insane portfolio of brands. So it was like Fender guitars, Gretsch guitars, Guild guitars, all that stuff. So started doing that. I was in-house there for about 3 years, and Fender was great, but it was also like a very slow pace. Part of that was because we ran like an internal agency, and our creative director, like he was a super rad guy. He was very chill though, and he didn't want to do more work than he had to. So he would like turn away a lot of projects. So we were just like twiddling our thumbs a lot of the time. So while I was at Fender, I've always been sort of attracted to illustration, and I got more into illustration while I was there. And I started taking on editorial illustration jobs while I was at Fender. So for those of you who don't know, that like when magazines were still a thing, like all those little spot illustrations, they'll hire these editorial illustrators for it. So like, right, I would get an email from the Atlantic, and they'd say like, hey, here's an article, give us 3 thumbnail sketches back in like 45 minutes. We'll approve one, and then you'll have like 3 or 4 hours to finish the illustration. So it's just like super fast paced and super fun. And I started doing those while I was actually like working at Fender. And then that kind of set me up for the next phase of my career, which was becoming this sort of editorial illustrator and infographic specialist. ended up doing a bunch of work with Fast Company. Jesse Bryan, one of our good friends, Greg Luzzi, he had that account, and then he was starting Visco, which people may be familiar with. So he's like, here, man, take Fast Company from me. Like, this is your client now, which was absolutely amazing. So I started working on like, yeah, very cool. So I did a lot of those early, if anybody remembers, like the UPS, like We Heart Logistics campaigns.
Oh yeah,
where they would just give you this, they would just give me this massive like data dump, and they'd be like, turn this into some sort of like interesting illustrated infographic, and I would have to make sense of it. So
talk
yeah, man.
to me about that. What process of distilling? Because we didn't have the tools back then that we do now, right?
Yeah.
I think this is an interesting conversation because this goes back to foundational principles of how do you take a massive data dump and turn it into something? What were your what was your thought process there? I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, dude, very challenging projects would like hurt my brain, but I realize now that like, I feel like it gave me a superpower because I could look at pretty complex data sets and then find out how to make like a theme and a framework and a story out of it. But it was really like, looking at these things and finding ways to like visualize it. So one of the first ones I worked on was like UPS sent me this long article about like, we're opening this crazy new sort of transfer center in like, I don't know, I think it was like outside of Nashville or something. We want to showcase the capabilities. Here's how many packages it moves an hour. Here's all the stuff it does. So I figure out how to create a visual around that. So I make this like overhead schematic of almost like this crazy, right, automated kind of warehouse with all of these different sort of automated tracks running everywhere, and just build a frame in which I can sort of highlight visually what's happening here, and then have these little chunks of data, and really even like taking their word vomit and then sort of breaking it down into these little chunks. So it's not unlike starting with a sketch on a painting, right? And starting very rough and then just kind of filling things in, but you're almost doing the same thing, but creating this framework for all of this data to exist in, and then fleshing things out over time.
You know what I heard? You know what I heard though, and it's interesting because it's what AI does, right? Like I'm going through this process right now. I'm building an agentic system to take these podcasts and boil it down into insights. And like I asked you to fill that form out, right? Then an overarching LLM. So now that I have your intense background and I have hundreds of intense backgrounds, show the pattern recognition across all of these transcripts. Like that, the thought of that makes our brain hurt, right? But what you're actually doing is, for me to make this system effective, it's literally called chunks, right? I have to chunk the transcript out. And you have to start breaking it down into these more simplistic ideas to create something amazing. Is that aligned or?
Yeah, dude, 100%. Chunking the data is absolutely what you have to do,
Yeah. No.
And you just got to start there, and then you can sort of refine and get more sort of minute. But you got to start by just like breaking things out into these chunks.
Dude, love it, man. Love it. All right, keep on going.
Okay, so, and then I'll get into some of the failures here. I'm kind of setting this up. So have the kind of freelance editorial stuff. I was doing it a long time, just kind of moonlighting, or while I was actively like during my day job at Fender. That grew to the point where I'm like, oh man, I can just go out and freelance and do my own. So do that. It's an absolute blast. And, not too much longer than that, I was working with my buddy, Jake Johnson. He was a Seattle native. He had moved back to Seattle. He started working with Jesse and Mike, and those guys basically are like, hey, we're starting an agency. We need an art director. And so Jake basically brought me in. Like, I didn't know Jesse or Mike at all. And I'd always been interested in kind of starting a studio and an agency, and then just didn't have, the opportunity didn't arise. And then all of a sudden it was right here. So I'd never been in the Northwest at all. I fly up to meet Jesse Bryan, Mike Anderson, through my buddy, Jake Johnson. Was just like immediately, I was like, this place is magical. I've been in the Southwest my entire life. It's just like lush green everywhere. Absolutely magical. So right away I was like, oh man, I want to make this happen. And
Dude,
go to the first.
real quick
Yeah.
anecdote. Same thing. I went to Trinidad, which is in North California, almost on the Oregon border, and we were
Yep.
shooting a gecko commercial. And they actually shot the intro to Jurassic Park there in this place called Fern
Oh,
Gully. And
sick.
it's just like 20-foot little river covered in ferns, right? And it's where the little velociraptors are running through the creek. And I remember just same probably thing that you had. I'm sitting on the road, and to the left, it is a beach with wild elk roaming. To the right, it is redwoods, and then behind that is a sand dune. And I'm like, this shit is Chronicles of
Yeah.
Narnia, but
What
it's
is
real,
this? Yeah. Yep.
bro.
Exactly how I felt.
All right, go for it. Sorry, I had to
Yeah,
add
dude.
that.
No, no, all good. So basically, I show up to meet Jake, Mike, and Jesse, and Mike and Jesse are late because they're pitching a client, even though we don't have a company, we don't have anything. And then Jesse shows up and he's like, yo, we just landed a deal to like build a mortgage calculator, brand this real estate company, and build their website. So like you probably need to move to Seattle. So I literally call my wife and I'm like, yo, you want to move to Seattle? And she's like, yeah, let's do it. So that's how, basically this crazy journey started. Went back to Phoenix, spent a couple months, got our stuff together, and then just moved to Seattle, dude. And started what was called at the time Body Group with Mike and Jesse and Jake. And like rough going early on, but like we very quickly, I mean, Jesse, like he is the real life Don Draper. Like the dude can just like pitch his ass off on like anybody I've met.
Right.
So we got some jobs in. We got a really big Microsoft gig like very quickly, and like pretty quickly went from like just the founders to like I think we had a team of over 10. We were sharing office space with like Tooth and Nail, and very quickly like we took over more of the office than Tooth and Nail Records.
Wow.
Just a crazy roller coaster. Fast forward like 9 months or something, and Mike was doing all of the new business, all of the client relations, and he's like, guys, I'm like not sleeping, like this is super gnarly. And I like understandably so, right? He was dependent, and it was like, oh, we had like 5 founders. We're like, oh, we're gonna have a really big salary. Like it was just like way too much too soon. And so Mike's like, I got offered it. He was basically pitching somebody, and then they offered him a gig. And he's like, I need to go do this for my health. And we're like, dude, we cannot hold that against you.
Yeah, yeah.
So at that point, it was like just the creatives in the room. And it was like, oh, we've each got to like sell like 50 grand worth of projects every month, or like that's a wrap. And I was just like, I tapped very quickly. I'm like, I'm just not there. That is not my skill set. Like,
Right.
I don't know anybody in Seattle. Also, at this point, like I've always had a real hard time with pitching, and it's just like not my strong suit. So, very quickly I was like, yeah, that won't work for me. I'm not going to be able to deliver on that. So basically we restructured and ended up like Jesse kind of took everything over, rebranded to Belief, and then built it up into the incredible agency that it was. But that was like, that was definitely like an early kind of wake up call, sort of failure, if you will, that it's like, I wanted, and it was just kind of, and I guess it was good that I recognized it early on, but it was like, I was in a place where like, I just wanted to be a designer. I just wanted to be the creative. But if you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to be a founder, there's a whole lot more involved in that. And like, you've got to own that stuff. You've got to develop that skill set and kind of like build that muscle as well. So that was kind of like an early lesson, lesson early on, that it was like, oh man, I've got this thing, but if I really want to be like an entrepreneur and sort of chart my own path, I've got to develop these other skill sets
Right.
that I just didn't have at the time.
And I'm interpreting that failure as maybe this is, and I see this a lot in entrepreneurship, is the excitement outweighs the practicality of what you actually have to do to start a company. Is that, am I
Totally.
interpreting that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so more in this failure in my mind, it's more of you're just naive to what it actually takes. And that's kind
Yep.
of the learning lesson you're going through, right?
Yep.
All right. What's next, man? Beautiful insight.
Yeah, dude. So left Seattle, went back to Phoenix for a short amount of time. We had bought a house and we tried to like manage it as a rental when we were, the first year in Seattle. It was just kind of a headache. So we moved back for a while, get that sold. And then we had done several trips, like weekend trips down to Portland while we were in Seattle. Really liked it. It felt like home. It felt like a big Durango to us. Way more affordable. So we're like, let's go down to Portland. But before that, we did essentially like a 6-month kind of like nomadic adventure where we went and stayed with some friends in Brooklyn for a couple months. Traveled internationally a little bit. Just kind of floated around before landing back. I went to Alaska for a while, which was fun, and then landed back in Portland and just started again kind of freelancing. I was lucky enough to where I'd made some great sort of relationships at Microsoft through some of the work we had done. They recognized sort of my illustration skill set. They had just done their big rebrand in 2012. And then they hired me on to help refine that illustrative style for the new brand and then build these massive illustration libraries for them. So I had a killer contract with Microsoft for like a year and a half. That led to a bunch of illustration work with Facebook, which was really cool. I did like, stuff for the events page, like the stickers for messaging, a bunch of end product illustrations for Facebook. I was doing like starting to get into like explainer videos, which was kind of like a natural evolution of my kind of infographic knowledge. Did a bunch of explainer videos for American Express, Intel, some other big brands. And then I just got sick of tech, man. I was just like so tired of it. I was so tired of like the vectory illustration stuff. And so I had a local Portland agency that brought me in just like on a gig to help with some packaging stuff. It was a small like boutique brand studio called Factory North. It was like 3 or 4 people at the time. And like the first product I worked on was literally, it was a cannabis brand called Fortune, and we made this mascot that was kind of inspired by like Zoltar from Big, and made this
Oh,
like
dude. Yeah.
insane high-end like joint packaging with like amazing typography. And like right away, I mean, my first day in the office, my then creative director Tyler, like they had this library cart full of like books of like resource material, like old matchbooks, whatever it was. And he's like, dude, I think we want to take like the layout from an old matchbook, but we want to use this Fortune character, and then we want to do like real high-end printing. And I was like, oh, dude, this is the dude I need. Like he was definitely taking things to the next level. The way he could sort of say like, let's use the layout from this and combine it with this and combine it with this. And then it was like, at this point, like I was really good illustrator, but I was always like, I didn't, my type skills were not where I wanted them to be. And he was like great at that. So I was like, I gotta like hang out with this guy and learn from him some more. So that led to me doing like a 3-year stint as senior designer for Factory North. And it was, dude, it was like hyper local. It was really fun. It was like coffee shops, cannabis brands, wine companies, restaurants, like all of these really thematic, really cool, immersive brands.
Yeah.
And had an absolute blast with that. What happened there was like, absolutely loved it. You know, I took, like, I kind of had 2 offers from 2 different agencies when I took the job at Factory North. There was another agency that wanted me, and they offered me like 30 grand more, like 401k, all of this stuff. But like, dude, their main client was like, you're going to be building like internal websites for like Walmart employees. And I was like,
Oh,
dude.
yeah.
And I realized right away, I was like, I considered taking it, but I was like, if I do this for 2 years, I can get out and then maybe I can go do something more fun like Factory North. And I was like, why? Why, if I'm already looking for planning my escape, why would I not avoid that and just go do the work I'm more interested in doing? So I basically went with Factory North, took the big pay cut. It was a great decision because it really like leveled up my work. And just
Real quick
yeah,
here.
yeah.
People get stuck in this all the time, right? There's actually Reddit forums out there, people in the millions trying to get out of corporate America because they did take the safe Walmart job. What is your advice there? Is it as simple as just follow your passions? Do you have any other thoughts there? Because this is a really critical theme that comes up time and time again.
Dude, I think it is follow your passion, but there's also like you got to pay your bills, you know? So you got to follow your passion towards like, okay, how are you really gonna? Because the thing with like Factory North is like, I loved it, but it was like not sustainable. And it like really economically probably set us back from where we could have been and where we should have been. So there's a balance there, you know? But like, I don't regret doing that, but you've got to figure out a way to like support yourself and
Right.
use like these newly acquired skills, which I'm actively trying to do. It's like bring that back into this other tier of creative.
Yeah. And,
um
and and what I heard, which I think is not said enough, is if you are going to take the lower paying job or something quote unquote risky, you have to do it for a reason that is ultimately going to set you up for future success or level you up, right? Did I hear that right?
yeah, it's a great way to put it.
Awesome. Dude, incredible. Keep on going, brother.
Yeah. So yeah, dude. Another kind of failure in recognizing something in myself was like Factory North. Like I realized I got really depressed at the end of it, and I got really burnt
Mm,
out. And a
mm,
big part of it, I realized like the work was a blast. Again, like it didn't pay financially like I hoped it would. But I realized at the end of it, the thing I was really struggling with was like I was spending all day, every day in a room, basically the size of my studio now, but it had like 5 people in there. And dude, I just got so burnt out and I was so emotionally exhausted. And coming out of that, it took me sort of leaving that and going into like a hardcore isolation mode to realize like, oh, I'm like a hardcore introvert and like I have to be alone to recharge. And I was not getting that anywhere. And it really just
interesting.
like drained me big time. Like even right now, like I've got this big studio space, but like, dude, I keep this mostly for myself because I like being alone a lot. Like I like to be social and stuff afterwards, but I almost reserve that social energy more for like outside of work, where it's
Yeah.
like when
Yeah.
I'm in the studio, I want to be heads down and be alone. And again, like I'm sorry, I'm rambling so much. We haven't gotten to
No,
talk about flow states, but like,
no. This is
dude,
amazing.
it's not hard to get into a flow state, but it's hard to maintain a flow state. So like an open office and open work environment, like it's almost impossible because like somebody comes and asks you a question, it's going to click you out of that flow state and there's a good chance you're not going to be able to get back in. This is why developers have like code mode, right? Like don't talk to me, because the part of your brain you need to be in to communicate with another human being is like a different part than when you're in a flow state. Like you've got to change the neural networks.
Yeah.
So that was a big realization for me. Like my work was really struggling at the end of my time at Factory North because I couldn't get into a flow. I couldn't get anything going because it
Right.
was just like constant input coming at me.
So so let's do this, and then I'm thinking uh let's talk about flow state, and then we'll get into augmented labs because I want to be cognizant of time. Do you have like another half hour or no?
Yeah, yeah, I'm good, dude.
All right, sweet. So uh transitioning into flow, well, there's one thing that I wanted to ask before flow state, which is the other thing that I heard you say that you did not say was balance and being burnt out. Like there's actually like I had a doctor on at one time, and I didn't know this, but it's like burnout is a medical diagnosis, and it
Hmm.
manifests in anxiety, depression, and a lot of different like physical effects, right? And so that brings up balance, which I think is a good way to get into flow state as well too. Talk to me about balance in your life and how you manage that, because this is something I struggle with all the time, because I am fully on board of having insane balanced life. but I also have 3 side hustles, a full-time job, and a 2-year-old. So
Yeah.
how do you
Yeah.
do it, right? But I
Um,
feel like on a daily basis, I have time with my family, I have time to think, and I feel overall relatively balanced.
yeah. Yeah, dude. And I'm similar to you. Like I am overall, I would say, probably not a well balanced person in a lot of ways because I'm like all in, like I'm managing multiple projects, I'm working on this, I'm working on that. So, but I'm also just kind of wired that way, right? Like that's the way I like to function. So for me, it all comes down to, and this is something our mutual friend Tom Hopkins
Yeah,
we talk about a lot is like
beautiful, man.
building building that daily stack, dude, and almost having like a morning stack and sort of a daily rhythm that like recharges you on the go. So a big part of this, Tom can attest for it, it's like waking up first thing and doing like Wim Hof breathing. We absolutely like both swear by it. Like it regulates your nervous system, pulled me out of like a deep depression. I think it literally like it changes your neurochemistry, it changes your brain wavelengths. So like even that, it feels like hitting the superpowers right away. But then it's like building sort of balance and stuff into my day. So like, the walk to my studio is like just under a mile and a half. So I'll walk every day. So I almost like I try to uh build in a certain amount of like activity and movement throughout my day because I'm not the guy that's taking like 2 hours to go do a workout. I'm like, dude, I'm just going to integrate it into my day. As I'm walking to the studio, I'm doing like breathing exercises to sort of cue up that flow state, get me in the right headspace. I'm listening to binaural beats as I walk so that like when I hit the studio and I hit my desk and like get the caffeine going, like I'm already primed and ready to go. And then right, the same thing. It's like I take on the walk home, I take the long way home and I walk along the riverfront and across the steel bridge and just kind of soak all of that in. So it's almost like building these little micro things into my
Mm,
day that kind of help add balance. And that combined with like Tom and I like to say, like building that morning stack where it's like I wake up, I do my breathing, I go right into movement exercises and then I go right into my walk. So it's like that is just like automatic in you, and that just kind of feels like it gives you the fuel to like push harder than I would be
exciting.
able to otherwise.
Very specific question. Do you have a hard stop at night?
um when I'm like being more disciplined, I like to have a hard stop.
Yeah,
But like when I'm in go mode, like typically no. Like
yeah,
if I'm feeling it, and again, like it's hard now to like when you're managing all these projects and there's so many stakeholders to have like heads down time where I don't have to be like, Slack messages, emails, and I can just kind of block all of that out, listen to some music and go into making stuff, which honestly, like that's what I would want to be doing anyway. Like I'll just kind of do that. But I'm not like at this point, I'm not a late nighter. I'm not burning like the midnight oil. I would
yeah,
rather, same as you, I'm like, I would rather wake up at 5 a.m. and have like 2 hours of uninterrupted work than
yeah,
like work
yeah,
until midnight.
yeah. Love it. All right, a little bit about flow state and then augmented
Yeah,
imagination.
yeah. So got obsessed with flow states in 2017 after reading a book called Stealing Fire by Stephen Kotler and Jamie Wheal. Cannot recommend it enough. And it's basically how like tech entrepreneurs, Navy SEALs in Silicon Valley are basically leveraging these non-ordinary states of consciousness to unlock peak performance. Again, I was mentioning kind of the end of my time at Factory North, I was having a really hard time focusing and was like, at one point, I was like, dude, my career as a designer is over. Like my attention's too fragmented. I can't do this stuff anymore. So it was really like out of desperation to like save my career in almost this survival mode where I was like, how do I find the ability to like focus and get into a flow of stuff. Like, it didn't feel fun anymore, right? I would have to wait until like there was a crazy deadline looming where you have that adrenaline just to like push through and get something. So learning about flow states through reading that book got me interested initially. Right around the same time, I was getting into like the Wim Hof breathing, which I later found out is like kind of a flow hack in and of itself. But what flow states are is, again, they're a non-ordinary state of consciousness. We've all experienced it. The best way to recognize it is the acronym STER, S-T-E-R. So you get a sense of selflessness, you get a sense of timelessness, you get a sense of effortlessness, and then you also get a sense of richness. It feels like you're able to absorb more information. So if you've ever experienced that, skiing or drawing or playing music,
Yeah.
like that's a flow state. It's the best feeling.
By the way,
And
podcast is my flow state.
dude, there you go. Perfect. Right. And it unlocks superpowers, right? It allows you to sort of perform on a level you wouldn't be able to otherwise. But I got really fascinated by this, and then one of the authors of Stealing Fire, Stephen Kotler, like, I just got obsessed. I read every other book I could find, every article, listened to every podcast, because he has a really great way of just breaking this down in a way that's like, it takes sort of the mysticism out of it. It's a very practical approach, even though it is like a mystical state. But dude, so I ended up going through, Stephen Kotler founded something called the Flow Research Collective, and they offered this, like, I forget what it was. It was like a 9-week sort of neuroscience backed high performance flow state training program. And I went through that. We do these weekly meetings, right, with a kind of coach. They break everything down. But through that, really learned what's going on in the brain during a flow state, and certain ways you can hack into it. So what's happening during the flow state, this is a really fun fact. They figured out what's happening under the hood or in the brain during a flow state by putting freestyle rappers into an FMRI magnetic brain scan, and then having them freestyle and seeing what lights up, what turns off. And so people assume that, like, during a flow state, your brain is just like lighting up everywhere more, but that was actually not the case. What happens during the flow state is your prefrontal cortex, that's where your ego is. That's where the timekeeper of the brain, that's the effort regulation. That's also the information regulation. All of that happens in the prefrontal cortex. It's really great for like looking into the future, planning for things, kind of building a map of your life, right? The prefrontal cortex is great for that. But like, if you look at basically the hardware and the computing power of the prefrontal cortex, like, think about how much you can sort of track with consciously. You can maybe follow 2 conversations at a time, but that's it. Right. So like, very little RAM there. So what's going on during a flow state is the prefrontal cortex actually shuts down, and all of that neural activity moves to the 2 hemispheres of your brain, which are like supercomputers that can process so much information. They're regulating your heartbeat. They're regulating, right? They're balancing your body. What's the temperature on the skin? There's just so much more horsepower there. And so when you're in a flow state, you're in those hemispheres, and they typically communicate with each other through the prefrontal cortex. It's like the executive manager. When you're in a flow state, that turns off, and they're just communicating directly with each other. And so the 2 hemispheres of the brain, you can think of the left hemisphere as like, it's almost like, I think of it as like the visionary and the implementer. One sees things very zoomed out on a very high level. The other one sees like super detailed how to like implement all of this. So you get those 2 sides of your brain communicating directly with each other. There's also like this neurochemical cocktail that releases in your brain. It's like these 5 sort of performance enhancing neurochemistry that increases performance, like, it's self-rewarding. So dude, it just becomes this like feedback cycle that like drives peak performance, but it's also the most enjoyable experience. So you want more and more of it.
Dude.
So like, dude, figuring that out and then figuring out how to tap into that is an absolute game changer.
And what's interesting is I haven't gone down this route. By the way, Stealing Fire is in my Audible library. I have bought it and downloaded it, never read it. Don't know, because from another podcast, an entrepreneur has recommended this. I'm going to read
There
it
you go.
immediately.
Yep.
But two, I've actually felt that like even now, right? Like it's what is this? Your CPU in essence, the prefrontal cortex, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the executive manager. When I'm thinking, when I'm at this podcast, it's almost like the front of my head is just, I'm not really thinking, right?
Yep.
I'm reacting and deeply listening, and I think that's a version of it, and how I can explain it.
100%.
Question to you though is, for people that are interested in this, anybody can do it. Is it the same principle as hard work over a long period of time to get there? Is it that simple?
So yeah, dude, the great thing about flow states is like they're highly trainable. So with like a couple of these hacks, you can really trick yourself into a flow state. I was mentioning like I do breathing exercises when I'm walking to the studio. So my favorite flow hack that works every time is like throw in some headphones, throw in a binaural beat that's already going to activate the two hemispheres of your brain. Go on a walk, because you're using the two sides of your body, you're also activating the two different hemispheres of your brain, because they control the motion for the different sides of your body. And then you also do a technique called box breathing. So box breathing is like breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds, hold at the bottom for 4 seconds. So if you listen to binaural beats, go on a walk and basically count off with your steps that 4 in, 4 at the top, 4 down, 4 across the bottom. Like you will literally, because the box breathing, it does something I like to call like distract the critic, the prefrontal cortex. Like you want, the same reason people count sheep to go to sleep, you want to like give it something to focus on so you don't get this self-critical voice. It's just like shut up and count, right? And you'll sort of like, that part of your brain will go to sleep at the same time you're activating the two hemispheres of your brain. So dude, do that for 10 minutes, sit down at your desk, and like you will be in a deep flow state. So you can literally like hack into a flow state with that stuff. But the beautiful things is they say flow states become flow traits. So like you do that and you kind of train that, and then you make those neural networks stronger in your brain. You can just kind of turn it on instantly.
Dude, I cannot wait to do this. I cannot wait to do this. I'm so excited.
Dude, for the blog you post, I've got like an infographic breaking this down, so I'll give that to you, and you can.
Dude, yes, please send that to me.
Yeah,
it's gonna be incredible.
Yeah.
So let's transition to why AI, why augmented imagination, why, like, what was the aha moment that really started thinking about? For me, it was Web3 and blockchain that kind of hit me, and I was like, oh God, the technology is changing. I see the future. What was that moment for you? And let's get into what you're currently building now.
Yeah, dude. So, I mean, I guess I'll start with the origin story of the term augmented imagination. And the way that came about is I have like one studio mate who's here every once in a while, my buddy Yvonne, who's just like creative technologist, absolute wizard, like one of the most impressive creatives I've ever worked with. And it was super early on. It was like pre-mid journey. Like, I don't think there were really any like nicely product AI creative tools out. But Yvonne is an early adopter. So he was like one of the first people on Stable Diffusion and Comfy UI. And like I come into the studio and like, again, there's real like Midjourney's not even out. There's nothing out there. And I see him basically as an individual creator creating this insane like animated music video as one person over the course of the weekend. And like creating all these crazy renders and then having the camera move through it and creating these transitions. And like, I immediately said, I was like, dude, what are you doing? He's like, I'm using this, this new AI stuff. And like Yvonne always says, he's like, dude, I don't want to just be an early adopter. I want to be on the tip of the rocket. So like whatever the newest thing, like he basically doesn't use like products. He uses whatever is the craziest open source, like newest thing out. Like he's building his own systems. So I saw him doing this and I'm like, dude, that's not artificial intelligence. That's augmented imagination. So right from the beginning, I was like reframing AI. I'm like, the capabilities that this unlocks is just insane. So that was kind of early on. And then I was working with Mike and Jesse on a lot of these startups we were launching, kind of starting with 6079, and then that becomes Think. So I was serving as like the designer and the art director for that stuff, but I wasn't necessarily using the tools. But at that same time, they brought on my now co-founder Sway Molina as our resident AI artist. And Sway was like Yvonne. He was just super early on, fascinated by these tools, figuring out what was possible. So Sway and I just started working on projects together and had like really complementary skill sets where I could build all the core brand assets and then Sway could very quickly turn it into this like insane manifesto video that goes viral, right? So I saw the capabilities, but wasn't like me as a creative, like I wasn't attracted to it yet because it wasn't giving me the control I wanted.
Right.
And so we kind of continued like this for several years. And then Think was looking for projects to like incubate through our Thinkubator, like launch other projects.
Yeah.
And they basically just come to Sway and I, they're like, you guys understand these tools, you know what's possible. Why don't you think of a use case that would be unique that we can use these open source tools and let's try to build a company around it. So I immediately my brain went to, how can I figure out how to use AI to build brands? Because generative AI is crazy, but the two things it lacks is consistency and ownership, right? I can't get consistent results, so I can't really build a brand using it because it's just like not reliable. And then if you're working for a big brand, like you can't be feeding all of their IP into this, right? Into OpenAI. Like it's not going to happen.
Yeah, because they own it all.
We, started looking around and started to research on basically these custom LoRa models, which almost function as like a filter that sits on top of a generative model. And you can train these custom LoRa filters to consistently recreate a style, consistently recreate a character. So we were partnered with Futureverse at the time, and Futureverse had built a product called the Meme Machine. They had this NFT character, the Fluffs, and they basically built these custom LoRas to where like you could go in, type in anything you want, and you could get a Fluff that was true to their character in any sort of scenario. And so Jesse made the connection with them at the time. And we basically said like, yo, we want to use the same technology, but we want to use it to basically build brands or to really own an illustration style. And they're like, oh, we've got like 80% of that built. Like we could absolutely do that.
Yeah.
So that led us towards working and developing a product called Supermodels, which is basically personally owned, privately owned, fine-tuned AI models, right, that you could generate consistent on-brand content with. Yeah. And so we started to develop this product alongside Futureverse, had some great meetings with them, but we quickly realized like, oh man, there's no like secret infrastructure here or no crazy sauce. It's just connecting these capabilities, these tools out here, which anybody who knows in the AI space, like there's new capabilities every week. Like Gemini 3 this week, it's going to unlock all sorts of new capabilities.
By the way, it's mind-blowing.
Dude, yeah. So Sway and I quickly realized like, oh, dude, we can totally do this to like, build what we wanted to build. My initial idea was like, I want to offer this to like illustrators who are scared of AI because like their life is their style. But if we could give them a way to like train up their style on a model that they privately own and then generate in their own ecosystem and be able to monetize it, that's super rad. So we started to develop that, right? And also, again, thinking through like the brand applications of this are absolutely insane. So we basically got down that road, but then we realized like, man, We initially set out to build this as like a standalone product, log into the website, upload your stuff, here it is. We realized like it's still like there still needs more finesse. There needs to be not just a human in the loop, but an artist in the loop, as I like to say. And also a lot of the people we were initially targeting, like they're just not willing to learn the technology.
Right.
So we realized like, dude, let's offer this training as a service and then build a studio model around it.
Right.
So, right, if somebody wants us to train up a model for them and then train them how to use the workflows, we're totally down for that. But also, like, why don't we rely on what we do? Like, we've been functioning as a creative agency, right? Jesse's founded successful agencies. This will be my third agency I've founded now. Like, let's build an agency model around this. Let's use this as our proprietary tech, keep developing the product, offer it as a service, but still with the goal of like, as the tech develops, as we understand this process more, then maybe we can package this up as a standalone product. But
Yeah.
in the meantime, like, let's start to do this for people and let's just do it as an agency. And that's what Augmented Imagination was really born out of.
That's amazing. And so, um, man, there's so many questions to ask. I think my first head goes, to your point, the education, and nobody wants to learn this stuff. And it's actually not, it's the easiest time in history to learn technology because it talks to you like a human, right?
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
explains to you what you need to do. Now, is it perfect? No. How do you think about like the just how quickly it changes in your products being outdated? Because how quick do we get to an LLM interface that just creates anything because it understands the nuance of human conversation? What are your thoughts on that? Because I with Gemini 3, what it can do, I thought that was like 2028. It's not even 2025, man. Like
Yeah.
the year has not ended. So, what
Yep.
are your thoughts there?
I mean, that was another sort of reason for us kind of pivoting and saying, like, let's go with this like services model and let's go with this agency model because like the tech is changing so quickly that if we were to try to like build all of this and then offer it as a product, like there's going to be something new out next month that's going to completely change the game.
Yeah.
So we realized like the agency model is still right, makes a lot more sense for that reason. But then you right, the other sort of concern with that would be like, well, if anybody has these capabilities, then like, what do you have to sell? But like, we're very quickly realizing with the capabilities that are already out there, and then people could leverage. They don't want to do it. Like, they still want somebody else to do it, and also. Like I said, you not only need a human in the loop, you need an artist in the loop. So if you can't envision something, right? Be able to see something that doesn't exist yet, and then take the steps towards building that and guiding the AIs to do that, like
Mhm.
you're still going to get, it's not going to be good.
Yeah.
So we
100%.
realized like creatives aren't going away, artists aren't going away. We're just going to be able to make more faster. So we're saying like, let's not hide from this. Let's not run from this. Like, let's leverage these tools, but then let's combine them with like the timeless craft that like we've been spending our careers developing. And like the intersection of that is going to be something really beautiful.
Yeah, and I think that is I I uh I think I've even changed my opinion on this, but in I used to say leadership, creativity, and human connection are like the last three things that we're gonna have. I might take leadership out of the equation because I just didn't realize how quickly AI would be able to get to automate and run literally its own company with maybe a human in the loop, not a group of
Yeah.
humans. And
Yeah.
so I think it really boils down to sports are going to become a huge thing. Concerts, in real life events and venues like are going to be massive, right? But then
Hmm.
there is, to your point, the strategy and the creative. There will be a human in the loop for a foreseeable future because you have to have these expertise and AI is just ramping those up. The other beautiful thing about what you said is it's you still can sustain the agency model, but that agency is no longer 200 people, it's 5, right?
Yep.
And so not only can you offer your insane services at a fraction of the cost, you still can stay profitable. And I think, talk to me about this concept is, and I'm doing this with like Nick and the Myron Labs crew, and Think Agents is another example, which is if you get enough of the right-minded people in the room, you have 5 people that could build a $50 million company because of the efficiency. But
Yeah.
I think the key mindset is, how do we just do this as a tribe and create our own shared economy and grow and learn and live fruitful lives together? Is that kind of where
Yep.
your head's at?
Dude, 100%. And you were talking about like the great, right, Web3, right? And
Yeah.
what that's led to. It's like, yeah, we got a lot of token gated discords.
Yeah.
I think the real thing that we're going to take away from like Web3, that I don't know if it's what anybody really expected, but it's the community
Yeah.
aspect of it.
Mhm.
It's community building products instead of products that build community.
Yeah.
And I think that's absolutely beautiful. And I see that happening in the Think ecosystem, in the Think Builders Club right now.
Yeah.
And I think you're totally right, Mikey. Like, we're going back to this more tribal way of existing. And I think we have to make our own little micro economies.
Yeah.
These micro economies, micro ecosystems, where it's like we can all support each other, right? And bring revenue into it and then use each other's services.
Yeah.
But it all comes back to community, man. And I
Yeah.
think that's really going to be key, which again seems counterintuitive, but it's like, Mike and Jesse say with Think, it's like our killer product is the community. That's
Yeah.
what it's all about. And I think like,
1000%.
let's build AI, again, still in lines from Mikey Anderson, like let's build AI tools that make us more human and we can amplify our creativity. I think that's the way to use this stuff.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on this concept? I was talking about one of my co-founder, Bubble. This, you got to talk to him. I gave you his calendar. You should set up a time. Beautiful human.
Yeah.
Um, we were literally talking about this yesterday, which was I had this statement of like, I didn't, because it was prompted by Elon made a tweet like, my robot is going to create the most wealth and prosperity, and poverty is going to be eviscerated, and all that's because of these robots and the economies you're creating. And I was like, that's awesome, but then it's this whole sense of self that Tom, me, and you and I have talked about, is like, that's the biggest pandemic. But then he made this really interesting point, and he's like, yeah, America is screwed because it's totally driven by efficiencies and capitalism. But he's like, people in Africa that are happy in their tribe, they don't give a shit, right? Like, this is fundamentally not going to change. So, but it's going to become a big crisis for us, because I think what we're talking about is AI will literally have to force us to break down back into this tribe mentality to where we all started. This is my kind of mind-blowing concepts. Do you agree with that? You have anything to layer on?
Oh, dude, 100%. And again, like, it's still like decentralization, right? Like, we're
Yeah.
decentralizing in a way, but like going back to this more like village, tribe, these little hubs, these little ecosystems. And I think Elon's got a point there, but I think also like we're the land of innovation, and we're going to figure out a way
Yeah.
to like innovate this stuff and build this stuff. One of the we've got a lot of brands we build over on the Think side, but one of the brands we've been talking about a lot, and a term we use, is like, be a good ancestor, where it's like we're going to go back to this sort of tribal, almost thinking of ourselves as like ancestors for
Yes.
what comes next,
Yes.
and like combining ancient wisdom with like modern technology. Like, dude,
Yes.
I want to dig in on that. Like, let's go.
And yeah, and that is actually, super opinionated people that I've talked to, that are really, and it's interesting to me. They love science fiction, but they're pissed off at everything going on right now. And I'm pitching this idea of like, I do think that is it. The key to us to get through the chat GPTs of the world owning us, or us becoming a paranoid, walled off state, and things going wrong. The only hope is exactly what we're talking about, is decentralization through micro communities that are building wealth, and then going, okay, I've got my tribe of 50 people. We're going to go show our other tangential 50 people how we did this and build it. And we build millions of these, and then you can't break it down. And the immediate rebuttal to this is, well, people are innately going to be bad, and if you have a ton of money, someone's gonna scam it over. And I'm like, well, the difference is we have the technology now to not let that happen. We have multi-sig wallets, we have blockchain, and then we have this emergence with AI. One of the most interesting things I've seen over the last year, I don't know if you've seen this on because of hardcore in the crypto Twitter, is the AI bros and the crypto bros who hated each other because AI guys were all about we're accelerating the future. And then they were like, these crypto bros are scammy. And the crypto bros that didn't understand they've merged together because they've made the same realization, like, oh shit, this superpowers the possibilities of the blockchain. And
Yep.
now we have all of the tech in place. It's going to get better, but we have the foundation. Thoughts on that? Does
Yep.
that make sense?
Dude, 100%. And again, that's been sort of like the thesis with Think from early on. It's like AI and blockchain, like they need each other. Like that, it's the perfect pairing, and that merger makes all the sense. And again, what we're trying to do is like AI you own. Like let's build AI that empowers the individual, right? So that the individual can be empowered in these little pods. Which, yeah, dude, like the capabilities there and the possibilities there are so exciting. But again, it's like super counterintuitive from what people think. It's like we've got, these big tech players just looming over everything, which, yeah, is absolutely a concern. We're more aware of that than anybody. That's why we're saying, like, we got to chart another path here, and we've got to create AI you can own and we can use to empower the individual. But dude, to kind of bring it full circle, it makes me think about, like, again, all of my native friends, that it's like it's bottom up, right? I think that's what we're coming into. Like, we're going to be building the future from bottom up, from the individual out. Like, let's decentralize everything, let's empower the individual, and like
Yeah.
build the future we all want to live in.
Yeah, I cannot state this enough for everybody listening and people that'll listen to this in the future. Find a tribe of people like the Mikey G's and the Johnnies of the world. Learn AI, inject it into your life, and just build cool shit. The rest will come. You know, even through the think, and put yourself out there, because think about the path of how we got to this podcast. I had been doing this podcast for a year. Guy named Shizler, he is part of my OG community. He's like, dude, you got to talk to this guy, Mikey. Literally has the same name. You kind of look similar. He's like,
Yep.
super cool dude. And I had the podcast, and just an amazing dude. And that's where I went down this rabbit hole. And then I met Nick, and then I met Tom. And we
That's how it
all
happens.
just have these, like, I think we're just like good-hearted, good-spirited guys that understand and can see the future and the opportunities. And it's from that, like, randomly, my old contact from Geico reached out, and he was the one that managed our billion-dollar media spend and like top tier connections. He just randomly saw I had a podcast, reached out. Now I've got the potential to work with him and Nick and Jeff being like CTOs, and like it's all coming together. But all this is coming back to these like two small cohorts of people. And that
Yeah.
came from
Yeah.
putting yourself out there and just building and trying new things, man. Like, what's your advice to people that are hearing this and being like, I'm overwhelmed, I'm scared? Because I think actually fear is the biggest thing that's gonna screw a lot of people over the next
Yep.
4 months or
Yep.
so. What's your advice
Fear
to
mind
people?
killer. Dude, it's exactly what you said. It's like, find a group of people that, right, you want to dive into this unknown, this crazy thing, and start exploring together, and start building something together. One of the things, the experience I've had with, like, you know Tom and my buddy Paul and like the Soul Sauna are like what we're building with the Think ecosystem. It's like it's so crazy that everybody spread out all over the world, you know, very different backgrounds. They have these ideas. They're all building products. But we had somebody, you know, an outside advisor in our Think Builders Club yesterday, and he's like, all of this stuff bolts on together. It's like we're all building these modular pieces that are going to come together to create some bigger whole. And it's like the pieces of seven thing, you know, it's like everybody gets a unique idea implanted in their brain, go out and build that. And then the universe will find a way to connect you with somebody. It's like, oh, I've got the other part for that right here. And
Yeah.
that takes it from like fear to excitement, where you start to see that stuff happening and you start to see people having like the same epiphanies independently from you. It's like,
Mhm.
oh man, we're all connected in such a deeper way than we understand.
Oh, dude. I mean, even my podcast engine that I'm working on right now with Nick, like imagine that tool for podcasters, but then rolls up into your brand creativity because all you see is the same stuff, which is I'm going to take a short of an interesting moment and just put captions on it. But to my point earlier, think about the like concepts and creative that could just come out of this singular conversation. And when we have the tools to make that feasible that you're building, right? It's gonna be totally like people could be blown away about the content that we get output from a simple podcast because
Yep.
no one's doing it, right? It can be a
Yep.
whole new form, and then people are gonna be like, "How the hell did these guys do that?" That's just one microcosm example, right? And then
Yep.
how which people don't know is like how Johnny and Tom and I started talking is because you have brand and we're working on like brand strategy stuff. It all just flows together naturally.
Dude,
Uh,
yeah, the way what you and Tom are working in ties in with what, you know, Sway, Jesse, and I are working on. It's like, oh, it couldn't be better if we planned it, you know, but it
yeah,
just happens independently, and that's
yeah,
magic.
yeah, it's beautiful. So we've been talking for over 2 hours. This has been phenomenal. I knew it was gonna be good, exceeded my expectations. The vulnerability is just I can't thank you enough for this. What I'd like to do is next 3 to 6 months, what does it look like for you? I'll ask my final question I ask every guest. I'll give you my final thoughts, and we'll call it a day. So, what do the next 3 to 6 months look like, brother?
Yeah, dude. Next 3 to 6 months, we're in a place now where it's like we've developed that like core tech around supermodels, and we're now launching Augmented Imagination, which is basically a AI powered like creative studio to facilitate that, right? So
Yep.
really hoping to get Augmented Imagination off the ground, start to take in clients of our own. We're also very interested and very excited. Like if you're an agency owner, if you're a brand, if you're an illustrator, you want us to build a supermodel for you so that you then have these capabilities. Like we're all for that. We want to build this stuff to empower people. So really getting that off the ground, getting that rolling, and right, doing the things we love to do, right? The timeless craft, the storytelling, the brand, but then fusing it with this AI technology. And hopefully, like my personal mission is like, I want to show people like, let's use this technology to amplify and augment our humanity, our imagination. And like, let's build the most beautiful, soulful human shit we can and be able to do it on a scale that we couldn't dream of
Mm.
previously using these tools and hopefully
Mhm.
redeem, right, a lot of people's views of what where things are going and what this technology is. Because like if you really dig in, like the future is very exciting. Like our friends Elysium, their belief statement is like the future is a gift, so like let's build the future we want to live in. So that's really what we're working towards.
Yeah, I love it. And I yeah, just to layer that on is I think it's interesting. I started this journey 5 years ago. I saw what was happening, and I was like, "What we're doing now is gonna become a lost art." You know, we're more connected, but we're more anxious, depressed, all of these things than we've ever been before. We have to do what we're doing now. But my
Yep.
secondary mission that's percolated up over the last year is I was part of the the whole Eliza. I had Shaw on my podcast. There was another guy named Percival who's billing. By the way, you have to talk to Percival because this guy's incredible. He's just a visionary and has been working on this thing called Project 89 for like 20 years. And it's actually an entertainment company wrapped in a metaverse, but the whole narrative is like we cannot Westworld the future. Like we have
Yep.
to treat everything with kindness, right? And we
Yep.
need to do this the right way, which is now rolled into my secondary mission, which is like, if you think about our opportunity of there's what, over 8 billion people in the world, think about the percentage of me and you that one has the lifestyle to afford to dig deep into this, has access to it. It is now, I think, my duty to use what we're doing now to give hope to the world.
Yeah.
We have to,
Yeah.
right?
Dude, absolutely. And what a great mission statement. Like that's like we're missing that now more than ever, you know? Like look at like I'm so sick of like it feels like the only new Hollywood release is just like another dystopian horror thing. I'm like, where's the love songs? Where's the hope? Where's the like optimistic view of the future? And it's like we as individuals are empowered to do that now. So let's just like go out there and make it.
100%, man. 100%. So, man, last question, winding down. I ask this to every guest in different forms or fashion, but I know you've done a ton of podcasts. I know you've public speaked. I know you've probably done multiple interviews. Would love to hear how this Mikey G podcast experience might have felt different to you, or any thoughts about what you just experienced.
Dude, I mean it was fantastic. My favorite podcast experience. And I like, you know, I want to get into like the deep shit, and I think that's exactly what you do here. And it was you know, it was a beautiful experience, and it was really fun to do it. And I appreciate like the opportunity to do that and getting to connect with you, and also getting to share like right, we don't we don't ask each other enough questions. You don't dive deep with people anymore. So like getting to share all this stuff is really an honor and a privilege. And yeah, dude, I really appreciate and cannot thank you enough for what you're doing here. So it's been
Thanks,
great.
man. I really appreciate it, and I mean, this is sometimes like Jesse's another one that rings a bell, is like where you have different rapport with people throughout this, right? And everyone that's
Hmm.
come on the podcast has been an amazing human being, but this is an example of like sometimes when I'm trying to recap and give you my thoughts, I'm more picking out timelines of what they said and some interesting thoughts. This one's coming from the heart, brother, which is I was immediately struck at how vulnerable you were. I've said this throughout the podcast. Thank you, and that is not lost on me. That is not lost on me at all. You delivered what I said before we even came to this podcast. You have fundamentally changed at least one life today from
Well,
what you
dude,
shared, and that
yeah,
that is the most powerful thing I think we can do as human beings. Where we ended and stopped, right? Is like it's our mission to have these conversations, to let people know, and that vulnerability is just was just mind-blowing to me. The conversations about creativity, design, perseverance, what was the one comment of we were talking about the tribes, and you had your friend had given that really poignant way of adversity creates character, something like
yep,
that. Yes, like
yep.
just beautiful insights like that. And I just appreciate you as a human being, man. I mean that this is, and like I said in the beginning too, we were just around a campfire. We became friends. I'm so excited that Tom and I are building something that gives us a chance to keep on talking, learning, and growing together. And I want to do exactly that. Please, 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 let's keep on talking together and build, learn, and grow and fail, because you're the type of people that I want in my life. And I think we talked about this too, right? Back to your childhood. We'll end it with a come full circle. one of the most important things you can do is surround yourself with the right people. You're one of those people. So thank you. Thank you for your time, brother.
Dude, thank you. Yeah, really appreciate it, Mikey. It's been fantastic, and this is just the beginning, dude. Excited to do it again and hang out and build the future together.
Yeah, we're gonna hang out IRL. I know this is a little bro love fest at the end. Sorry, apologize to the
Hey,
listeners.
it's all about the love.
With that being said, I hope you enjoyed the journey. 2 hours and 9 minutes. Mikey G and Jonny.